what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Nashville Native. I took a little bit of an absence, but hey, I'm back. I'm ready to give you that Nashville sports coverage that you've been longing for, that you crave, that you deserve. So I'm your host, Justin Hawkins. Now, we've got a great show for you. There's been some breaking news on the Titans front. We'll get into a little bit about the Nashville Predators, an interview that I had with 102.5 The Game morning show host on Robbie and Rex Road, Robbie Stanley, that I had about 2 weeks ago, so we'll share that for you. We'll get into the Tennessee Vols and talk a little bit about the college football playoff. And this is your reminder. Here on the Nashville Native, we talk all things Nashville sports. So get ready, buckle up, and let's dive into it. All right, before I get started, I just want to say, for those of you who are returning, thank you so much for joining in and following along all our Nashville Native Podcast sports content. But those of you who are new to the show, thank you so much for tuning in and learning about the podcast. We talk all things Nashville sports. But you can follow along on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram for all those sports content moments. So let's just dive right into it. Let's start with the news of the day regarding the NFL and the Tennessee Titans. Those of you may not have known, but if you do, like I said, it has been nationwide news breaking that has shocked at least me, and I don't know who would have expected this, but the Titans GM, Jon Robinson, was let go today by Titans owner Amy Adams-Strunk. Now, like I said, this news is pretty shocking to me because especially we're going into week 14 and you're first in the division in the AFC South. Now, it's a pretty poor division, but you are first in the division. You're probably going to win your third straight division title and you're let go. You're going to make the playoffs for the fourth straight time and you're let go. Now, what could be the reason behind it? Now, it is a little sudden after the Eagles loss, and I'll get into more about the Eagles loss in just a second, but look, it is without question that Jon Robinson has made some questionable calls in his last few years as the Titans GM. But with all that said, look at the bigger picture. The guy has not had a losing season since he began. This is his sixth going into the seventh season, and he's had nothing but winning records. He started out in his first season as 9-7 and making the playoffs. How many GMs do you know that have winning seasons as long as they are tenured with that team and they have winning seasons? Not many that I know of, but here, let's get down to the root cause of it. It really starts back in 2020 with his draft class. Many of you may remember right tackle Isaiah Wilson out of Georgia, who was drafted in the first round by the Tennessee Titans. Now, it was a COVID year, I get it. There may not have been a lot of scouting that you could have done properly or what have you, but look, the guy played one snap, I believe, in his NFL career, and as a first-round draft pick, and that's all you can get. That starts it right there. Okay, then you move into 2021. In the first round, you draft Caleb Farley. Now, look, he had a lot of promise coming out of Virginia Tech as a cornerback. But look, he had back injuries, and he tore his ACL his first season, and he's not been able to really get on the field. And when he has, we've talked about it on this show quite a bit, that Caleb Farley just looks like a shell of himself. Now, also, he's made quite a bit of trades that just did not work out. Or look at Julio Jones. He was very hamstrung, literally hamstrung all year last year. Played in a handful of games. He went out and signed Jadeveon Clowney, which didn't really work. He went out and signed Vic Beasley, which didn't really work. And then last season, this is probably what put the nail in the coffin. Jon Robinson traded star receiver A.J. Brown for a first-round draft pick and a third-round draft pick in last season, or this past draft, and in which the Titans ended up getting Treylon Burks, which, it's still to be, the question is still out there if he's going to be good enough. But now he did have a touchdown on Sunday against the Eagles, but it did come at a cost. He did get a helmet-to-helmet tackle, and he was forced out of the game. Possible concussion. Now, when you let go of a star receiver, a franchise receiver at that, questions are going to arise, and your job's going to be in question. Now, Adam Schefter of ESPN and the NFL Insider on NFL Live today, he did say that Amy Adams-Strunk was not very happy with being left out of some of the conversations. Now, if this is true, if she was left out of conversations, including A.J. Brown, I would have to say I agree with this trade. That's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. And for that kind of player, you're not going to include your owner into that decision. Maybe she can find some money out of her pocket and give him some money in bonus or guaranteed money. But to do it yourself, obviously Mike Vrabel was just distraught about the move. If you remember in the draft when the trade happened, Vrabel literally got up out of his seat, walked around, and shook his head. Now, that probably started some kind of disconnect between the GM and the coach, which if you've noticed throughout the season, some of the press conferences, Mike Vrabel has shown his level of frustration with Jon Robinson and, kind of like passive voices and whatever, saying about the players and stuff like that. Now, we'll get into that in just a minute about what Vrabel thinks of the players, because I think that's getting a little ridiculous in some of his post-game interviews. But look, Jon Robinson is out 6 straight winning seasons, okay, on his way to a 3rd straight division, on his way to a 4th straight playoff appearance, and he's out. Now, because of the A.J. Brown trade, I'm going to have to agree with it because, look, that was terrible. Everybody was shocked. You can't tell me that you were happy about that move. Nobody was happy about that move. If you are, it's because of the money. But can you not make the money work? Can you not forfeit somebody else and make that work? Look at the receivers this year, people. It's terrible, okay? Because you let go of A.J. Brown, you go out and grab Robert Woods, who tore his ACL last year, okay? He has been a shell of himself. He cannot get open. He is not running routes right. He is dropping passes. He is not what the Titans hoped he would be. That also is another aspect that Jon Robinson has to face, okay? Decisions that he is making is not very good. Look, I'm going to make a little bit of a joke here. You may like it, you may not like it. Look, what is one thing that the state of Tennessee and the Titans have in common? Okay, if you look at today is December 6th, okay? It was 70 degrees that it topped out today. Yesterday was in the 40s. The day before that was in the 40s. Okay, Tennessee cannot maintain its temperature. Okay, they're up, they're down. That is exactly what the Tennessee Titans are. They are up, they are down. You never know who they're going to win against. You never know who they're going to lose against. You never know when they're going to have success. You never know when they're going to have failures. They're just up and down, okay? You need a GM, you need a head coach that can take you to that success. Mike Vrabel has shown that amidst the injury storm that has happened in the past couple of years, that he can take these players to success, okay? But that's the common theme here of the Titans in the state of Tennessee. You just don't know what you're going to get on a daily basis, okay? Each Sunday, you could win, you could lose. You just don't know, and that is the problem. Now, all that aside, Ryan Cowden, the executive vice president of the team, he will take over in the interim. But I will have to say, you have to believe that Mike Vrabel had some kind of say in this, and that you have to believe that for the rest of the season and maybe moving forward that he will have some kind of power for this team. That he could be involved in the hiring process and determine what kind of person they bring in. Or maybe he just has more say as far as what players go, because obviously he did not agree with the A.J. Brown trade, and maybe he won't agree with some of that. But here's the thing that I mentioned earlier about Mike Vrabel. If you've noticed in some of the press conferences, he doesn't really put blame on the coaches. It's obvious that the coaches need to coach better, but he keeps saying that the players need to play better. They need to execute better. Is it not a level playing field around here? Okay, obviously the players need to play better, but the coaches, maybe they're not putting the best scheme out there. Maybe they're not coaching them better. Look at the offsides that happened on Sunday and a field goal in the 4th quarter. Okay, the Titans could have stopped them from getting a touchdown, in which they did. Okay, they were kicking a field goal, and then what happened? Offsides on a dang field goal that really didn't even matter. It had no potential, output in the game. Like, it just didn't matter. Had no factor. Okay, but yet the coaches aren't coaching them, and the discipline is terrible. What happened last week against the Cincinnati Bengals when they were kicking a field goal kicking a field goal to go up still one possession? You didn't jump off sides, but you hit the center, which you can't do. The discipline is just not there, and it's getting ridiculous, okay? The coaches need to be held accountable. The players need to be held accountable. Why do you think maybe Mike Vrabel, after the game on Sunday, said that they're at a crossroads? Well, yeah, you're at a crossroads because you don't know where to go. You don't know how to coach. You don't know how to play, okay? Look, there's a lot of frustration that can be had. The Titans lost 35-10 against the Philadelphia Eagles. I mean, it was a sad game. They scored 10 points in the first half and 0 points in the second half. Stop me if you've heard me say this before. It's a tale of two halves. Stop me if you can't. Because literally almost every dang week, one half is success, one half is not. Or you just don't show up the whole game, which was Buffalo, which was last Sunday against the Eagles. Okay? You're not doing enough. And we have to keep putting the pressure on Todd Downing because 2 years straight, the offense is terrible. They're ranked one at the bottom of the league. It is getting ridiculous that we are employing this coach. Okay, now look, after the Green Bay game, he had a really good game. Okay, what did he do? He celebrated so much that he went off and got drunk and drove and got a DUI. The coach is just not good enough. You don't have the personnel, but you also don't have the coach to elevate that personnel. Look, the receivers are terrible. Derrick Henry looks kind of like a shell of himself, and the offensive line just cannot block. Okay, Dennis Daly is a terrible experiment that just needs to stop. Now, unfortunately, yes, Taylor Lewan is out for the season. At this point, you may have to re-sign Taylor Lewan. He may be your only option to solidify something on that left side of the line because it is just terrible. The Dylan Radins experiment should be over and done with. He can't play. Dennis Daly should be released. He can't play. Okay, we just have to face it. Okay, Derrick Henry has not reached 100 yards in 4 straight games. Even though we play the Jacksonville Jaguars on Sunday, I'm not 100% sure that Derrick Henry can get to 100 yards again. It is that bad that they cannot pass block, they cannot run block. They started to it's sort of like in the middle of the season, but they're tailing off now. And usually the offensive line, shouldn't they get better? It's not happening, and it's becoming pretty bad. Now, like I said, A.J. Brown trade was probably part of the Jon Robinson firing. But look, A.J. Brown just went off on Sunday. 8 catches, 119 yards, and 2 touchdowns. It makes you wonder, one, why did you let him go? But 2, look at what he can do when you pass the ball on purpose. The Titans, all they want to do is run and want the receivers to block. And then every now and then you throw in some pass. But obviously Ryan Tannehill loved to throw to A.J. Brown. It was evident in the amount of times he got either close to 1,000 yards or he got a 1,000-yard season. But look, A.J. Brown he's a really good receiver. And Jalen Hurts and that Philadelphia offense makes him look elite. Top 10 receiver this year for sure. And the Titans let him go for a first and third round pick last year for Treylon Burks. Touch on Treylon in just a minute, but A.J. Brown showed off, and really he shoved it in your face. For all those watching, it made you mad. It made me mad watching A.J. Brown go off like that because he should be doing that in the two-tone blue, and he just didn't. He did it in the ugly green that is the Philadelphia Eagles. And, we have to live with that now. Now we have to move forward, and we, as a fan, we have to watch the Tennessee Titans try to navigate where they want to go. Okay? They have holes to fill everywhere. And the more I got to thinking about it today, the more I think that the firing of Jon Robinson today actually makes a little bit of sense. I was reading some on Twitter and some research that usually about this time, towards the end of the season, now that the college football playoffs are going on and the college football season is really ending, it's time for NFL scouts to get out there and scout those college players. So it kind of makes a good sense now is for the Titans to really switch gears and just start scouting for the NFL draft. Because whoever's going to be GM, there's a lot of pressure going to be on this draft. In my opinion, the first thing you need to do, it's got to be offensive tackle, right? It's got to be left tackle. Or anywhere on the offensive line. It's just so bad that it's not even funny anymore. It's not fun to talk about. It's not fun to watch. It's just not fun. And I'm sure Derrick Henry's having a ball back there. Yeah, right. But they're going to have to go solidify that offensive line. Really, honestly, to me, nothing else matters. But back to the game, okay? 35-10, like I said. The Titans defense couldn't stop anything. The Titans offense couldn't do anything. So, look, there's blame all the way across the board, anywhere you look at it. But the defense really, they're starting to show their true colors now. The depth of cornerback is really starting to come to light and show the issues because Trey Avery can't get it done. Look, he was covering A.J. Brown. Why is your number 3-4 corner covering their number 1 receiver? That just doesn't make any sense. Why is Christian Fulton not doing it? Now, Christian Fulton didn't have a good day either, and neither did Roger McCreary. They're not playing very well. We're not getting enough pressure. Look, this is the second straight game without Danico Autry, and his presence is missed. You saw it early in the season with the difference of Bud Dupree being out. Now you're seeing the difference of what the Titans' defense is needed when Danico Autry is out. They're just not getting the pressure, and the defense needs him back badly. If they want to get any kind of pressure, if they want to put pressure on the quarterback, make him scramble, make him flustered in the pocket, Danico Autry is the guy. Okay, it's a puzzle piece, right? Okay, and without Danico Autry in that puzzle, the Titans' defense is just not great. Maybe that's why the Titans' defense has been so good earlier in the season, is because they were putting so much pressure on the quarterback that the corners were just, they were covering for a little while, and the quarterback would get flustered and just not make his smart throws. But here we are. We're not getting pressure on the quarterback. Okay, we've had 1 to 2 sacks a week for the last 3 weeks, and they've just given up a lot of points. 35 points is the most they've given up all season. They've been averaging about 20 points up on the year. So that's what the defense did. Now for the offense, like I said, the wide receivers, they're not really doing anything. Now, Chig Okonkwo, the Titans have found something in him. He has been great. Now, they don't get him the ball enough, and he doesn't take as many snaps as what you would think he would take, but he has been great. He's been what the Titans' offense has needed, and obviously Tannehill likes to throw to the tight ends. So he's been playing well. Traylon Burks had his first career receiving touchdown. Against the Bengals, he had his first career touchdown in general as a fumble recovery for Henry's 69-yard run. But he got his first receiving touchdown, and it came at a price. Number 22 on the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm not even going to say his name because it's not important. Head-to-head contact. It looked like it was targeting. They didn't even review it for targeting. He should have been ejected. But it caused Burks out of the game. And hopefully he comes back this week. Hopefully he comes back the next week. But hopefully it's not too bad. But it definitely did not look good. Kudos to him for sticking with that ball and holding on to it throughout the catch. So that was good. The O-line, they're not blocking enough. Derrick Henry has no time to run. Even when he does have time to run, just think about this. When is the last time, if ever, you've seen Derrick Henry run outside the tackle, and then while there's space on the outside and try to beat them in a foot race, he cuts back inside into 2 defenders? I saw that on more than one occasion. You can't tell me that Derrick Henry does not have hesitation or is not the same. Maybe he's starting to tail off. I don't know, but it's the Derrick Henry that we saw last year before he got hurt and the year before that is not the Derrick Henry that we're seeing now. How many times have you seen him held below 100 yards? This is the most that has happened in his career, and it's starting to add up, and it's gonna cost you more losses. Okay, look. You lost to the Bengals, then you lost to Philadelphia Eagles. Okay, that's 2 losses in a row. You go to the Jags. Hopefully, you can recover and get you another win to go to 8-5. But look, after that, you're gonna have the Chargers. The Chargers are not great, but they're also not bad. Okay, you have to show that you can beat good teams, and you haven't shown that so far. The closest that you've gotten to beating a good team that's not the Green Bay Packers, because their record says that they aren't that good, is the Kansas City Chiefs. And you even did that with Malik Willis. So there's a lot needing to be improved. They need to look at themselves in the mirror. It's gut check time, and just pedal to the metal. Do what you can and just be great, because otherwise you're just looking at mediocrity. You're going to look at another first-round playoff loss and another disappointing end to the season. Okay, that is what the Titans have done as of late, except for 2019 when they made it to the AFC Championship game. So there's a lot to look at. Now, the Jags are going to come in on Sunday at home in Nissan Stadium. The Jags obviously aren't playing that great. They'll play in close games, and but they just can't finish them, right? The Titans have played in close games. They have finished them, but then they haven't. It's going to be, if they lose to the Jags on Sunday, I think you're going to start to understand where the Titans are going, which is not great. But the Titans should easily win Sunday. Their defense should show up. Danico Autry hopefully will play this week. Hopefully Derrick Henry gets back to his old form because he loves running against the Jags. Think about 3 years ago when he had the 99-yard touchdown run. So we need Derrick Henry to show up. We need the receivers to show up. We need the defense to show up. Okay, just because it's the Jag doesn't mean it's a guaranteed win. It is the NFL after all. So look, besides the Jags, you have to look at the season. Okay, we talk. Obviously, Jon Robinson's been fired. They're probably going to go in a different look here. Maybe we'll have a different Titans team next year. The identity of the team isn't quite fully run. Hopefully, they go more balanced because we need more of a passing attack than what we have. It's pretty sorry right now. So you got the Jags twice, you got the Chargers, you got the Cowboys, you got the Houston Texans again, and that concludes your season. Okay, there's some wins out there for the Titans to grab, and they need to take care of business going into the playoffs and show teams that they're just not an easy out. Okay, but right now that's not what they're saying. So, all right, let's move on a little bit and go transition into the Nashville Predators. Look, they've been playing well. If there's anything in Tennessee that actually has been good lately, the last 2 weeks the Preds have played well. They're 7-2-1 in the last 10 games, dating all the way to 2.5 weeks ago. Okay, the last time I was on here, I talked about Forsberg, Yossi, and Duchesne. They need to show up, and they have. Okay, they're starting to find their form. They're regaining what they did last year of their point per game pace. They're not quite there yet, but after 23 games played, Forsberg is sitting at 22 and Duchesne at 21, Yossi's at 20. So they're getting there. They're showing up, and they're getting games they're winning games that matter. They're not just they've played in some overtime games, but at least they've won them. You still need more offense, though. Okay, look, here's a stat that is ranks I almost said Titans, ranks the Preds bottom of the league or near the bottom of the league. It's how many times have you seen a team score 4 goals this season? Dallas Stars are number 1 with almost 20. The Preds have only had 6. Okay, that's near the bottom of the league, if not the bottom of the league. So obviously we still need more offense. The Preds still need more offense. They need to play more defense to hold the other teams because they can't score the 4 goals. They've allowed the 4 goals several times. So they need the defense, they need the offense, and they need the goaltending. They still need everything to really come together. Like I said earlier about Denico Autry, it's a puzzle piece. The Preds' puzzle piece is all around play because they're not fast enough, they're not all that physical enough, and their defense is just not all that great. So they need everybody collectively to buy in and go balls to the wall. They haven't quite done that, but obviously 7-2-1 in the last 10. They're really picking up the pace here. I believe they're ranked 4th in the Central now. So they have some time to go up. Now, they played last on Friday. It was a doubleheader. Or they had a Thursday-Friday game back-to-back. New Jersey, and they won that one in overtime, and then they played against the New York Islanders, in which they won that one. So they have a long break. They don't play till Thursday. They played the Tampa Bay Lightning. Now, the last time they played Tampa Bay Lightning, they lost in overtime at home, which was 2 weeks ago. Now, before this game, I was able to sit down in a cool interview with ESPN 102.5 The Game, Robbie Stanley, who is the co-host of Robbie and Rex Road on the morning show on ESPN 102.5 The Game. And we were able to talk about kind of the Predators' struggles on the season so far, what's going on with UC Saros, what can they do to get better. The power play has struggled. So it was a really cool interview to sit down and talk to him. So here, I'll let you listen to that. Welcome back to the Nashville Native. Justin Hawkins here, and I get the privilege of sitting down with Robbie Stanley, co-host of ESPN 102.5 The Game, Robbie and Rex Road, weekday mornings, and former NHL.com writer for the Nashville Predators. We're talking the Nashville Predators and their season thus far. Thank you for sitting down and taking the time for me. Robbie, how you doing?
Justin, I'm doing good, buddy. How are you?
I'm doing good. So, Robbie, let's just take it all the way back to last season. The Predators got swept by the Colorado Avalanche in the first round of the playoffs. It was clear that the Predators needed to upgrade the roster if they wanted to stay competitive. So they went out and traded for Ryan McDonough, defenseman, and they went out in free agency and signed Nino Niederreiter. What were your initial thoughts on those additions impacting the roster?
I thought it was a really good job by David Poyle and the Predators to add two guys that are impactful players, but have also done a lot of winning. I mean, especially in the case of Ryan McDonough, he's done a lot of winning. He's obviously, he was the captain of the New York Rangers. He won 2 Stanley Cups with the Tampa Bay Lightning. And I just think when you can bring guys in that have won before and they know what it takes to win and they're still playing at a high level, I think those are really good moves. I love the contract for Niederreiter, 2 years, really short term in terms of the, just the length of the contract, but also the money at right around $4 million per year. I thought was really good value for Niederreiter, and he's been really good so far. So I thought on paper, 2 really good moves by the Predators to bolster their lineup. I think it was also, Justin, just kind of a signal of how they viewed the team. They got younger the last couple of years. They kind of reset the roster a little bit. And then making those 2 moves kind of signaled to me that, okay, it's time to get in the playoffs and start to do some damage again. So at least that's how they view it in my mind. So I thought 2 really good moves by David Poyle. They're both, I think, starting to settle into a groove now. And I think as the season goes on and they get a little bit more comfortable in their roles here, you're going to really see those 2 guys come together and really play well, I think.
Right. So you talked a little bit about Niederreiter's contract at $4 million per. But, if you go all the way back to free agency period, there were guys like Matthew Tkachuk who went through the Florida Panthers through trade. You could have signed Andrei Burakovsky or Andres Palat, who all had fairly similar value that could offer the Preds, getting younger, like you said, or just in contract value and their on-ice performance. What did they not address given that?
Yeah, I think there were probably some more high-end guys out there in terms of their offensive ability than they got Niederreiter. Niederreiter, to me, you pretty much know what you're going to get out of him. He's going to be right around 20 goals. He's really good defensively, and he plays kind of that hard-nosed game that John Hines likes. So I think the Predators type of player, I think Niederreiter is what they got. I think David Poyle was in on. I think he absolutely called about Matthew Tkachuk. And he was like the grand prize. If you could have found a way to get him, he's a 90, 100-point guy, and he's 24 years old. I mean, that would have been kind of the home run. But Matthew Tkachuk wanted to go to Florida, and Florida gave up a big player in return in Jonathan Huberdeau to get him to come down to Florida as well. So, I think there were probably a couple of better options offensively that they could have gone with. But in terms of the all-around fit and the contract value, I thought it was a really good signing in Niederreiter. And now, as you start to move forward here, I mean, they're going to have some salary cap space next year. They'll have a little bit of cap space at the trade deadline. So if they wanted to go out and make another move, they probably could. But Niederreiter, getting him for 2 years, I think that kind of solidifies the top 6 a little bit. And what you're hoping for is a guy like Tomasino or, they keep talking about Alec Tolvanen, somebody growing into that top 6 role and playing on a cheaper contract that way. And that leaves you even more room for flexibility that way.
Right, and even Niederreiter, he has, 7 goals on the year so far? Yeah. So he's made a pretty good impact on that second line. And Ryan McDonough's done a pretty fair job. So, I mean, yes, they have impacted the Preds thus far, but there is still some struggles.
Sure.
So we're talking the Nashville Predators with Robbie Stanley from ESPN 1025 The Game. And Robbie, you've covered the Nashville Predators, writing for NHL.com for 8 years, formerly. And you've seen expectations, high expectations with the Predators, like they had going into this season, especially having those additions. But the Preds have had a very slow start to the season, as they currently are sitting 4th in the Central and 8th in the West. Looking at goaltender UC Saros, since his rookie season, he's always started the year slow. How would you describe his slow start this year?
Yeah, I think this was probably the most dramatic one in terms of just him being the full-time starter. Traditionally, a lot of his slow starts to begin the season have been when he's been the backup to Pekka Rinne. And, since he's taken over as starter, he's had some slower starts, but not quite as dramatic as we saw this year. I think the encouraging thing is it looks like he's starting to kind of settle in and kind of snap back out of it. And you got to remember, he also had an injury this past offseason in the playoff series where he's talked about, it took him a little bit longer than he thought to get over that. And it's just one of those things too, Justin, when you're a goalie, like mentally, you got to be able to push and you got to be able to move side to side. And I think when you have an injury the way that he did with the ankle, maybe it takes a little bit of time to get fully comfortable back in there in a game setting. And some of that may have been the injury. Some of it was just, he was not playing well. We wasn't on his game. And the encouraging part, I think, if you're a Predators fan, is He started really slow. It looks like he's showing some signs of maybe coming out of it now. But the large body of work with UC Saros, you know what he is. Like, he's a really good player. So I tend to believe that, when you pay attention to sample sizes, players tend to gravitate back towards what they actually are. And I think UC Saros is an elite goalie. So I think he's going to be stronger and stronger as the year goes on if he can stay healthy. And maybe the slow start ends up being a good thing in terms of the desperation level kicks up a little bit earlier than it normally would in a regular season. But there's no question he started slow. The team started, I think, much slower than they anticipated doing.
Right. And if you just look at the stats of UC Saros, he's sitting 38th in save percentage and just 43rd in the goals against, which obviously that definitely, like you said, is a slow start. But you also mentioned, he had an ankle injury going back to, and he missed the playoffs, which could have been in part to the sweep by Colorado.
Yeah.
So given the ankle injury and his slow start last year, and you mentioned that he's an elite goaltender, what would it mean for this team to have Saros return to that Vezina finalist trophy and return to that form?
Well, I think that's what gives them a chance to win, right? I think they have good players offensively. I think they've got a good defense core. What can separate them is they have a great goalie. And in hockey, when you have a great goalie, you're going to give yourself a chance to win on most nights, and you're going to give yourself a chance to win in a playoff series. And is he going to just be a total eraser out there? Probably not. But if UC Saros is at the top level of his game, you can play really average game if you're the Predators and score 2 goals, and you're right in there with a chance to win. So I think goaltender in hockey, a lot of people try to compare it to the quarterback in the NFL. I don't know if it's exactly the same in terms of the impact that they can have on the game, but they're the one guy on the ice that's out there the whole time, and they can steal the game. And how many times have we seen UC Saros steal a game? So if they could get him, if they could get him back to top level, that would be, I think, best case scenario for this team, because I think they're good enough everywhere else. Not great everywhere else, but they're good enough everywhere else where if he's playing at his top level, they're going to win on most nights.
Right. Well, it's not always about stopping the pucks.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's about putting the pucks in the net. And for the Predators' power play, it's been a very mighty struggle. You go back to last year, they were 6th in the league when they finished.
Yeah.
But this year, they're just 30th. Why have the Predators struggled to put the puck in the net?
It's a great question, because they started the year off, Justin. It was the same unit that finished last year top 5 in the league, or top 10 in the league the whole year. They were top 10 in the league from game 1 to game 82 last year, top 10 the whole time. So, obviously, Predators' power plays of the past, that hasn't always been the case. They've struggled before, and they've got the same guys out there this year. They've split up the units as of late. But it's a great question. Sometimes I think it's just as simple as when things don't start well, which they didn't for the Predators on the power play, you get 4 or 5 games in. I think what started happening was they were trying to make the perfect play a little bit too much. You're making that one extra pass, or you're hesitating that one extra second to try to put the puck in the perfect spot when you're taking the shot, rather than just letting it go and letting it fly. And I'm not saying that they should just turn around and just fire slap shots off left and right every time, but I think sometimes when you struggle to begin the season, there's some overthinking that takes place, and I think the Predators are kind of battling through that right now. And it's, sometimes simple is the best, and I've talked to several people about this. Sometimes when things aren't going well, you got to put the puck on the net. You've got 5 guys, they've got 4 out there if you're on the power play. Get to the rebound, see if you can put it in that way. And it sounds simple, and that's a lot easier said than done, but I think sometimes they've been guilty of overthinking it a little bit too much. And Matt Duchene, I think I'd probably single out as a guy that's done that a lot. He had 43 goals last year. A lot of those came on the power play. And I feel like there have been times this year where he's just maybe trying to make the perfect play a little bit too much. And we've seen it when he shoots it. He had a goal last week against Minnesota where he gets it on the power play, doesn't think, just fires it. It's bar down and it's in. And I think a little bit more of that type of mentality would help the power play.
Right. And, just go to post-game interviews. How many times have you heard people say, get pucks deep?
Oh, yeah.
So you listen to Nashville Native, talking with Robbie Stanley from ESPN 102.5 The Game. And you did mention a little bit about the success that the Preds had, especially with offense. Matt Duchene had 43 goals last year. But for Roman Josi, your star defenseman, he had a career high with most points per game. He was a point-per-game player, really more than that.
Yeah.
And most points by a defenseman in league in 20-plus years. And but this season he's kind of had a slow start as well, just like UC Saros. What is behind his slow start?
Well, it's interesting because he's a guy that he dominates the puck so much, and he's always got possession of it. Especially when you think about, he's a defenseman, so you don't typically think of defensemen as guys that carry the puck a lot, that dominate, control the puck. He absolutely is that. He's the driver for the Predators of their offense, and I think we've seen that at times this year where he's had the puck, he's making plays. Some of it is I think he's made some good plays, made some good passes, and people aren't finishing on it, and that's some of it. I think some of it has been they've probably been in the defensive zone a little bit more than they've wanted to be when he's out there, in terms of you can't put up points when you don't have the puck. And I think they've been caught out there a couple of times defensively for extended periods of time, which you're just not used to seeing with Roman Josi. So I feel good about him. I mean, he still makes some plays. He'll make one or two plays every game where you look around and you say, well, nobody else that they have can make a play like that. Like, he's still got that in him. And I think last time out he had 4 assists. So I think he's starting to find it a little bit offensively. But, Justin, we talked about the power play. Big part of his points last year were on the power play. He had 96 points last year. I want to say almost 40 of them came on the power play. So when your power play is struggling, that's obviously a big part of Yossi's game there in terms of point production. So if they get that part of it figured out, I think his points will start to come in after that as well.
Right. Well, we've talked a lot about the players. We've talked about the power play, but it's not all on the players, How much of the responsibility is on the head coach, John Hines?
I think a significant amount. And, he's an interesting guy because there's the Predators fan base, I feel like it's kind of split on him. There's some that think he's doing a really good job. And I'll be honest, like, before the start of this season, I didn't really understand the John Hines conversation. I thought that he had done a pretty good job with the roster that he had. I didn't think the roster was very good. I think the roster is better this year. It's still not an elite roster, but it's better this year with the addition of Niederreiter and McDonough that we talked about. And I think some of the slow starts were on him. I mean, they've made some lineup decisions this year that I don't really agree with. I mean, when you get totally outscored and just punked in the first period like they've done a few times this year, part of your job as a head coach is to get your team ready to play. And it looks like there have been some times this year where they've not been ready to play. So, they've come back home here, and they got a lot of home games coming up the rest of November and into December. It's an opportunity to collect points. But certainly, I mean, if you're the head coach in this league more so than any other of the major professional sports leagues, if you don't produce, you get fired in this league. I mean, that's how it goes. So I'm not saying that John Hines is in immediate danger of losing his job, but this is the first time, in my opinion, where he's had a roster where I feel like they should be towards the top of the division. I'm talking second, third, somewhere in that neighborhood. And if they don't get there this year, to me, that would be disappointing. And I think you have to look at the coach.
Right, and even you touched on it a little bit, but in the offseason, he signed a 2-year contract.
Yeah.
So, his success is not bad if you think about it. It's 101, 72, and 11 in the regular season. But really, you have to look at the playoffs. His playoff record is 3-11 as a Predator. That's obviously it's not very good. So if you come back to this season and moving forward, how can Hines overcome this and lead this team back to success and even become second or third in the division, like you said?
Well, I think it begins with being better in the regular season in terms of your consistency, right? So let's think about the last 2 playoff matchups. They played against a really good Carolina team a couple of years ago, and they had to be basically the hottest team in the league the second half of the season just to make the playoffs. To their credit, they did that, and he deserves credit for that. Last year, it was mid-January, you looked at the standings, and the Predators were at the top of the Western Conference. And sometimes I think people forget about that. And then they basically hit a nosedive at the last part of the season. Even before UC Saros got hurt, they were really struggling. And they were struggling to pick up wins, and they were struggling to defend. And that ends up, you blow a game late in the year to Arizona, and instead of taking on Calgary in the first round, you take on Colorado. Well, we saw Colorado last year in the playoffs. I mean, they just blew through everybody. And I think part of having better success in the playoffs, if you're John Hines and the Predators, be a little bit better in the regular season so you don't have to take on the Carolinas and the Colorados of the world in the first round. Now, you'll have to see them at some point and beat them at some point anyway, but I think I'd rather take my chances with Colorado after they played a series or two rather than when they're completely healthy and ready to go in the first round. So that's the big thing. I think you got to find a way to be more consistent in the regular season, get to that second or third spot in the Central Division, and that way you don't have to worry about playing Colorado, who I know Winnipeg and Dallas are off to a great start. I still think Colorado's going to win the division when everything's said and done.
Right. Well, the Preds have now won 3 in a row, so they're starting to improve, and the Nashville Predators have made the playoffs for 8 consecutive seasons. But given their early success or the early struggles, how can they overcome that? And what is your thoughts on where the season can end?
Well, I think a lot of it comes down to Saros. Number 1, can he stay healthy? Number 2, can he play better than he's played so far this year? If he can, I think you're going to be fine. Like if he plays back to the level that we've seen UC Saros the last couple of years, they're going to make the playoffs. They're going to get in there. They're going to be competitive as the season goes. Now, obviously, we can't sit here and predict injuries, but I think they're good enough offensively to where they're a playoff team. I think they're good enough defensively to where they're a playoff team. What about when you get there? That's the question. I think that's the question this fan base is waiting to answer. You talked about it. They've made the playoffs 8 years in a row, which is great. They've been past the second round 1 time in the history of their franchise, which obviously they got to the Cup final that year, and it was great. But I think the fan base is, all right, we know what making the playoffs is. When's the next time you're going to make a deep run? And does this team have the talent to make a deep run? I don't think so. I think there's still a couple of guys away from making a run to the Western Conference Finals or the Cup final or anything like that. But it'd be real nice to win a playoff round this year and maybe try to build on it from there and continue to move forward, because this core group with Yossi and Duchesne and Johansson and Forsberg, they're not getting any younger. UC Saros not getting any younger, and it's time to win now with those guys. And if you can't do it, you may have to think about tinkering the lineup up a little bit as you move forward.
Right. I'm just gonna be honest. I've been a proponent of that.
Yeah.
I think it's about time to kind of look where you're sitting and look yourself in the mirror and think you may need to restart. They wanted to do a competitive rebuild, and they tried that, but then they wanted to win now again. So kind of have to pick and choose. All right, Robbie, I've got one final question for you, and then we'll conclude this interview. And it's just Nashville hosts Tampa Bay tonight in Bridgestone Arena. What are your thoughts on the game tonight? How can they pull out the victory?
Well, Tampa obviously is a team that's had a ton of success in the past 3 years. They won 2 cups. They went to the Stanley Cup final in the year they didn't win the cup. So 3 consecutive cup finals in a row. They're a team that knows how to win. It is an interesting matchup because Ryan McDonough's been on the other side of it the last 3 years. So interested to see how he plays tonight. He played with Yossi the other night. I thought they looked great together. So really the key to me is, can you get the special teams going? Can you get the power play going? Because I think 5-on-5, especially if Vasilevsky's in net, Tampa Bay is good enough defensively where they're not going to give you a ton 5-on-5. And they've got guys like Kucherov and Stamkos. They're a dangerous team offensively. So we saw it last year in the Stadium Series. The difference in the game was the special teams. Lightning were really good on the power play that night. Predators weren't. Predators have to be good on the power play if they're going to beat Tampa Bay, and that is a tall task when you're taking on what, in my opinion, is the best goalie in the world, in Andrei Vasilevsky.
Right. Well, hopefully after the game, we're talking a 4th consecutive victory and just, Preds win.
Yeah.
So, well, that's it for the interview. I really appreciate you sitting down with me, Robbie. Do you have any thoughts?
Hey, I appreciate you having me. Really enjoyed it, and anytime I get to talk hockey, it's a good day.
Yeah, talking hockey is always fun.
Yeah.
Well, you're listening to the Nashville Native. I'm your host, Justin Hawkins. All right, so that's a really cool interview that I got to have. Was really appreciative of Robbie Stanley to sit down with me and have that conversation. I definitely learned a lot. I hope you learned a lot. Now, here's a cool thing. Since the interview, the Preds have picked it up. So like I said, is this a coincidence that they're 7-2-1 or 6-1-1 since that interview? I think not. But I did say a couple shows ago that Judgment Day is coming. Now, my Judgment Day was middle of December, between Thanksgiving and before Christmas, just to see where your season's at, where your season's going. Now, when I said that, they were struggling. Not that they're not struggling now, but they're doing better. Judgment Day is coming. Okay, you have to decide where you're going to go. Okay, are the Preds going to go for it? Are they going to stay where they're at? Or are they going to sell? Okay, if it was up to me, I am not going for it. Okay, the way the team is, you're not. It's like the Titans. You're not a playoff team. You can get to the playoffs, but what are you going to do in the playoffs? And Robbie Stanley said it best. What are you going to do? They've not been doing well the last several years. Okay, obviously in 2017 you made it to the Stanley Cup final. 2018 when you won the President's Trophy, you lost in the second round. But since then they've not made it back past the first round. So what are you going to do? And in my opinion, you either have to stay where you're at or sell. And we've been staying where we're at or trying to go for it for the last several years. So I think the Preds it's time to sell. Okay, sell while you've got some players high. Get some draft picks, recoup your Milwaukee team, or recoup your young guys there, and just go for it that way. Just restart. You don't have to be a full restart, but you need to restart in some capacity, because you don't have a lot of draft picks coming up, and you just don't have a lot in the pipeline. Okay, you need to replenish, and I think it's time to do that. As Preds fans, you have to look yourself in the mirror and say, are you ready for that? Now, you can let me know, leave in the comments on my YouTube page or Twitter or whatever, of what your opinions are on this, but in my opinion, I think it's time to look yourself in the mirror and decide if it's time to restart, and I think it is. So, we'll talk about it more on the coming weeks. We'll be observant and see where the Preds are going. If they continue, maybe you do go for it. Maybe you just transition, but I just don't think this Predators roster, the way it is currently constructed, is going to get you anywhere but either a first round or second round playoff loss. You're not going anywhere but that. The defense is not good enough. They don't play tight enough. They don't play defense enough, and they don't score enough. Obviously UC Saros has not been playing well this year, and Kevin Langton, the backup, has arguably been playing better. They win when he's in there, and it's just, you have to look yourself in the mirror and decide, when is enough enough? For me, enough is enough, and it's time to move on. It's time to figure out where you're going. And I already said it once. I don't think David Poyle should really be general manager anymore. Maybe the Preds should take the advice that Amy Adams-Strunk did and let go of David Poyle and just restart there. That if a new GM came in, there would be some drastic changes. And I think that, in my opinion, that's where I'm at. I watch each game and I'm thinking, kind of like the Titans. Are we going to win or are we going to lose? What team is going to show up? Okay, and that's what it's been for the last several years. And obviously when you get to playoff time, that's when everything matters, and they don't show up. So here we are. Judgment Day is coming. Maybe it's next show or the show after that we'll talk about the actual Judgment Day. But Judgment Day is coming. Decide what you're going to do. I've already decided. Now it's up to you. Now let me know what you think, and we can talk about it from there. All right, so last, we've got the Tennessee Vols in the college football playoff. Now, the Vols had 2 losses on the season, a very bad loss against South Carolina in South Carolina that was very shocking in my opinion. You lose Hendon Hooker in that game too to an ACL tear, and really everything since then has just been frustrating. Just because you're a 2-loss team doesn't mean you shouldn't be looked at for the playoff. Now, every team that's in the playoff, now that it's been decided and we've had championship weekend, you have Georgia number 1, Michigan number 2, TCU number 3, and Ohio State 4. Each one of those teams either has 0 losses like Georgia, or you have 1 loss, or Michigan also has 0 losses, and you have 1 loss like TCU and Ohio State. Everybody after that has at least 2 losses. Now, here's what the frustrating part is. Why is Alabama ahead of Tennessee? When you look at the comparative schedules, what makes you think that Alabama should be over Tennessee? Okay, head-to-head, Tennessee beat Alabama. Okay, Alabama also lost to LSU. Tennessee destroyed LSU in Death Valley about a month and a half ago. That was a very impressive win. Now, sure, yes, did Tennessee lose badly to South Carolina in South Carolina? Sure, yeah, they did. But I think they also, it's not like they got severely blown out by Georgia. They were they weren't really competitive. I mean, let's just put it at that. But they had 2 losses, so did Alabama. But head-to-head matchup, Tennessee won. That should be your tiebreaker right there. But then if you want to dive into it more, how many top 25 wins did Tennessee have? I think they had 6. How many did Alabama have? They didn't beat anybody over a top 20 ranking. Okay? Tennessee beat number 3 Alabama at the time. And then now they're ranked 5th? That just blows my mind. Okay. Now, Tennessee ended up ranking 6th, just behind Alabama. So if you just want to put that all aside, okay, look at it for what it is. It is very impressive what Josh Heupel has done in his second season as the Tennessee Vol head coach. Okay? Getting 10 wins in your second season after doing something that no coach since Philip Fulmer has really done is get 10 wins It's very impressive. And now he takes them to the Orange Bowl. Now, like I said, Hendon Hooker tore his ACL against South Carolina. So you've got Joe Milton as your quarterback. So I don't trust him. I don't trust Joe Milton because he's not a very accurate quarterback. He will sail it more than he underthrows it or on target. So that is just something that Tennessee fans are going to have to deal with, as he is probably going to be your starting quarterback next year. But the Tennessee Vols are going into the Orange Bowl and playing a really high-caliber game against Clemson. Clemson Tigers have been very good. They won their ACC championship against North Carolina on Saturday. So this is a big matchup. Now, if you're playing DJ Uiagalelei, or however you say it, you're probably going to win. Now, he got benched after their second series. Okay, he's not a good quarterback. Look, he was the quarterback right after Trevor Lawrence, so expectations were so high. And he also, in a couple games, in replacement of Trevor Lawrence, did pretty good. But in his 2 seasons as a starting quarterback, he has been terrible. Okay, and he actually got benched in the ACC championship game to their backup Klubnik. And he really showed out, and he took that Clemson Tiger from to the next level and got them the big win. So Tennessee's going to have a really big, tough test. And what I really like about this is, not if you just put football aside, it's just they're playing in the Orange Bowl. Clemson Tigers and the Tennessee Vols are playing in the Orange Bowl. 2 teams that are predominantly orange are playing in the Orange Bowl. Now that's just funny, in itself. But other than that, okay, so that's going to be a really good test for the Tennessee Vols. If they can win and Joe Milton has a good game, I think you can look at your future next year and think that Joe Milton maybe, it's going to be successful. Otherwise, you're going to have to look at the freshman that I'm not even going to try to pronounce his name, coming in. He's just a small quarterback, and I don't think he's ready to be a starting SEC quarterback right away. So other than that, the college football playoff is going to be quite interesting. Now, I thought it was very interesting how the college football playoff committee ranked the teams because, typically when you lose a championship game, sometimes whoever's in number 5 will jump the 4 seed or whatever. But that's not what happened on Sunday when the selection show came out. They put Georgia, Michigan, TCU, and Ohio State. TCU lost to Kansas State in a very big game, the Big 12 championship game on Saturday, in which Kansas State won in overtime. That was a really good game. I don't know if you watched, but the Max Duggan, the quarterback of TCU, is actually really good, and he put his team on his shoulders, especially on that last drive to tie it up and to go into overtime with all the runs that he did. So that's something to pay attention to. But I thought it was very interesting to see how the committee ranked the teams, because like I said, it would have been very easily to see TCU go from 3 to 4 and Ohio State go from 5 to 3 just because of rankings and over the course of the season they're the dogs go, so that's annoying. But I'm going to keep going. Probably somebody just walking outside, annoying. But anyways, so Ohio State had 1 loss. It was to Michigan. It was not a very good loss. They got blown out. But it would have been very easy to see Ohio State jump TCU into that 3 spot and play Michigan, which would have been an epic rematch. But maybe the committee is holding out hope that that's your championship rematch. We'll see. But USC was the number 4 seed going into the weekend. They lost to Utah pretty bad on Friday night. And then, of course, TCU lost. But they stayed at 3, and then Ohio State jumped in at number 4. So that'll be a really good thing to watch on New Year's Day. And then my guess is it's going to be Georgia beating Ohio State and Michigan beating TCU. But I will say TCU is a good underdog that I would probably bet on to at least cover whatever the spread will be, and even to win outright. Because while I think Michigan is really good, TCU they're very physical, and they've got a lot of heart and passion that they show through that football team. And I think that they can make the national championship. But my guess is right now it's just going to be 1 versus 2, Georgia and Michigan, the 2 undefeateds clashing head-to-head, big programs. And I think Georgia will end up coming out on top because really just they have so much talent from head to toe. Now the quarterback sometimes has a little bit of questions there with Stetson Bennett, but I think Georgia will come out on top, and we'll talk about it more as the times keep coming. But that's kind of my thing on the Tennessee Vols and the college football playoff as it sits today with a selection show that happened on Sunday. So, well, that's it for today's episode of the Nashville Native. Thank you so much for tuning in. If those of you who are new to the show, please follow along on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Subscribe or leave comments when you want to. My name is Justin Hawkins, and I'm the host of the Nashville Native. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.